Hello, this video presentation will explore Native Americans and substance use. I will cover briefly Native Americans' cultural differences as it pertains to substance use, abuse, or dependence. I will also cover the Native Americans' risk and the possible causes of why their risk is higher than other ethnic groups. And in addition, I will cover why evidence-based treatment alone is not successful with this population. I hope by the end of this presentation it will give you some information about the Native Americans' relationship with substances. Let's begin with some facts about Native Americans. There are over 500 federally recognized tribes in America. Each tribe has its own language, traditions, customs, and history. Most Native Americans live in urban areas. The Native American philosophy is different than the dominant culture, even for those living in the dominant culture areas. The Substance Abuse Mental Health Service Administration report that 14.8% of Native American communities are in need of treatment for alcohol dependence, and 6% of Native American communities need treatment programs for drug abuse and dependence. We have learned from different researchers that the cultural includes all of the socially transmitted aspects of a way of life, from values and knowledge to social behaviors and practicing. Understanding Native American cultures and tradition is a challenge for mental health agencies. Identity is an important aspect for everyone. Culture forms someone's identity, and researchers have theorized that the Native American identity may be influencing their risk of substance abuse. Low orientation to Native American culture was associated with higher levels of multiple substance misuse. If culture is a precipitating fact informing a person's identity, then many urban Native Americans are at a disadvantage in informing their identity because they are not exposed to the cultural traditions of Native Americans living on reservation. In addition, some researchers have found different cultures react differently to treatment programs. About 60% of American Indians live in urban areas. Many of the different levels of tribal background awareness affect the acculturation levels of urban Indians. These acculturation levels could have a negative influence on the urban Indians' use of substances, but these acculturation levels could have a positive effect on the treatment success of substance abuse. In addition, urban Indians are marginalized by the dominant society, and this increases their risk for substance abuse and dependence. Some negative similarities between most Native Americans are the risk for substance abuse, because whether they're from the reservation or the urban Indians, they're both at high risk for substance abuse or dependence. Most Native Americans, though, respond positively to treatment programs that include both the traditional Native American healing with the Western evidence-based practice. And the interesting thing is, even when the awareness levels are low, one group of researchers found out by instructing the people who did not have any awareness or information about traditional healing methods and having them proceed in these methods, that it was actually helpful to them, and they were more successful in retaining the treatment program and staying sober or clean. Some differences that may not be so obvious between Native Americans and other cultures is one, that with some national researchers reported that Native Americans are 5 times more likely to die from alcohol-related causes, and that Native Americans have a higher risk for substance abuse and dependence than other ethnic groups. Their family dynamics are different than white because white live in a typical nuclear family where the parents and their siblings, and Native Americans on reservations live with extended relatives. Research has shown that white children are more likely to be affected by their parents' opinions of substance abuse, where Native Americans it's not shown as obvious. Substance abuse mental health service administration had did some studies in 2009, and they found that Native American children scored above the age of 12 years old and older scored the highest in reporting that they had taken prescription drugs that were not prescribed to them, and that they were more likely to participate in the use of illicit drugs. There are several reasons why Native Americans are at high risk for substance abuse. One is most Native Americans live in economically disadvantaged neighborhoods. They also have a disrupted connection with traditional values because they're not living on reservation, and many Native Americans that live in the city and in other rural areas have lost the traditional values and customs of their ancestors. Another reason is because of the parents' attitude and the parents' bonding. Researchers have found that some of these reasons, like the parental bonding, is due to historical trauma. Historical trauma is the emotional and psychological wounding that happens through generations. Native Americans share a history of abuse perpetrated by others. This abuse has led from colonization, genocide, oppression, racism, and forced assimilation. The wounding was passed down to each generation, from the parents to the children, and continued on and on. This historical trauma is related to PTSD, depression, and grief, and these are all conditions that are comorbid with substance abuse. One example of historical trauma, so that you can understand what I'm talking about, is how forced assimilation with Native American boarding schools. They were forced off their reservation, taken from their families, their parents, and forced into these schools. And many Native Americans suffered abuse from their teachers. They weren't allowed to speak their language. They weren't allowed to do a lot of things. And they lost that connection with their parents. They didn't learn how to nurture others because they were not able to experience that nurturing quality from their parents, from having to live away from them. So when they grew up and had children, they were unable to teach their children the same type of nurturing and social skills that they would have learned from their parents, because they didn't have the skills to teach their children. Then that's passed down to the next generation, and then to the next generation. And that's what historical trauma is. That's one example. Researchers have found that positive parent relationship does deter adolescents from using drugs. So this is really an important aspect in wanting to fight or drug abuse, or wanting to help Native Americans with drug abuse, is approaching these subjects of historical trauma and teaching the social skills and the parental bonding. It could very well make a big difference on decreasing their high statistics with the substances. Now, there are some reasons why research and treatment have not worked with the Native American community. Many Native American communities do not trust researchers because the fear of the researchers exploiting Native Americans prevent Native Americans from accepting their assistance, and it also from accepting evidence-based treatment. In the past, researchers have gone in and had performed experiments and never shared with the community. They've taken their information and used them in ways that was not agreed upon by the Native American elders and the leaders of the community. So this has created a lot of distrust in Native American communities with the researchers. Another reason is that many researchers were ignorant of Native American customs and traditions, so they offended the Native Americans. And the evidence-based treatment program ignored the cultural beliefs of many Native American communities. The funding sources required for treatment is based on evidence-based treatment that will work. They do not generally accept the Native American communities treatment or traditional methods of healing, but some have found the integration of evidence-based treatment practices with Native traditional methods work well within the Native American communities. Some people have offered suggestions on how to work with Native American communities. When creating treatment programs for Native American communities, become familiar with the tribal customs, histories, and their traditions. Listen to the needs of the community, because they're the people who know what they need. Use treatment programs that return Native Americans back to the sacred path. They found that even with urban American Indians, that when they're brought to relive some of the traditional Native American ways and methods of healing, that they responded a lot better than just dealing with an evidence-based treatment program. And include the community when designing the intervention program. Include the elders and the other people in the community. Develop trust with the Native community, because that will really help you. Okay, and I'm going to finish this video presentation up with an approach to how to go about designing Native American community treatment programs. This approach is really good, I think, for any ethnic group to use. But here, it's a simple approach. It's called CBPR approach. It's community-based participatory research is a model that researchers can use to design and have successful research treatment programs with Native communities. This form of action research describes 3 stages that researchers can follow. The first stage is to study the participants' values, communities, traditions, and customs. The second is to develop a perspective of what the problem is that the community needs to have treated. And then the third is to include the community members to initialize the plans. There are 4 principles behind this approach, and they are to identify and define the Native communities, because there are over 500 recognized tribes, each one with its own unique set of traditions and customs. The second is to work with what you have. Many of these Native American communities have a lack of funding for substance abuse treatment programs, so find innovative ways to make up for that lack of funding. Include the community as equal partners, sharing the research that you do so that they can continue on with the programs, as well as to generate trust. And finally, honor the cultural norms of the community. I think that if more researchers were to apply this approach with integrating the traditional healing methods along with evidence-based practices, we would find a lot more success in the treatment programs for substance abuse for Native Americans.